I never imagined losing my job at 8 a.m. would lead to their unbelievable downfall by noon. I still hear the deafening silence of that office, my heart racing as I clutched my termination letter. My fingers trembled, a cold sweat creeping down my back. I left the building, the strong smell of burnt coffee still lingering in the air. I felt hollow like a shell, casting long shadows against the bright street. I glanced at my phone. 20 unread messages. My sister's smile flashed in my mind. Jessica always knew how to lift my spirits. But today my heart ached. I couldn't bear to tell her the news. They had promised me stability, but it felt like a rug had been pulled from under me. As I walked aimlessly, I stumbled across a peculiar little shop I'd never seen before. The window displayed odd trinkets that seemed to whisper secrets. One caught my eye. A flickering orb. It pulsed with strange colors, tugging at my curiosity. My heart thrummed as I stepped inside. The atmosphere was thick with mystery, a mix of sweet incense and something metallic. The shopkeeper, an old woman with piercing eyes, smiled knowingly. "Ah, you're here for a reason," she said, her voice crackling like dry leaves. My skin pricked with unease. I felt the weight of her stare as she extended the orb toward me. I hesitated but took it. It hummed with energy, sending goosebumps across my arms. "Beware of the choices today. They'll change everything," she warned, her eyes grave. I left, the orb pulsing in my pocket like a second heartbeat. The world outside felt different, charged. I passed by the cafe where I had laughed with coworkers, my usual place of comfort now tainted. As noon approached, a storm brewed inside me, questions swirling. Could this day get any worse? And then it happened. A loud crash echoed down the street, glass shattering, a shriek piercing the air. My heart stopped. People were running, their faces painted with fear. I felt paralyzed. What was happening? My legs finally moved, racing towards the chaos that beckoned, dragging me into uncertainty. As I reached the scene, my heart sank. It was my former boss, lying motionless on the ground with the shop's orb rolling away from his limp hand. A suffocating sense of dread washed over me. What had I unknowingly unleashed? What choice had I made? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air around me felt thick, heavy with dread and uncertainty. My former boss lay crumpled on the pavement, the edges of his tailored suit now dusted with remnants of shattered glass. Chaos raged in the streets, but within me was an aching stillness, a muted horror that seemed to drown out the world. "Call an ambulance," a voice yelled, cutting through the haze. Spectators began to gather, their faces a mosaic of shock, curiosity, and fear. Each glance felt like a weighted accusation aimed at me, an unspoken question. Did I have a part in this? Heart racing, I fought the urge to flee. Instead, I stepped nearer to the scene, my gaze fixed on the orb that had rolled to a stop a few feet away. It pulsed softly, almost beckoning. What had the shopkeeper meant by choices? Was this a consequence of something bigger than my job? Suddenly, an urgent hand grasped my arm, pulling me away from the throng. It was Jessica, her features taut with worry. "I saw it all," she said, voice shaking. "What happened?" "I don't know, Jess. I was just walking. You can't be serious." She interrupted, her eyes wild. "You were just fired. This is insane. People think. They think you had something to do with it." Her words felt like shards of glass piercing through the numbness around my heart. My sister was scared and so was I. I opened my mouth to explain, to reassure her, but nothing came out. "Please, you need to get out of here," she insisted, pulling me away from the crowd. "You'll only make things worse if you stay." As we turned to leave, something gave way in me, a flicker of anger and fear spiraling into a deep-seated sense of injustice. "I didn't do anything, Jess. You know me. It's just a coincidence." But her silence said more than words ever could. She knew the world was rarely fair, that factions collided with power and fear. I felt a weight settle in my chest as we walked away, voices buzzing like angry bees around us. We found ourselves in a nearby park, the whispers of the rush fading into the background. Jessica perched on a bench, her face barely concealing her worry. I sat next to her, the orb still humming softly in my pocket, begging for investigation but requiring an answer I was terrified to confront. "What are we going to do?" she asked, glancing sideways at me. Did I open my mouth? Information about the job and the incident jumbled in my mind. But then from the corner of my eye, I noticed a young girl sitting on the grass with an ice cream cone. She had a thoughtful expression, licking at the melting treat with an intent focus that reminded me of simpler times. In that moment I felt a deep pang of longing, not just for my job, but for the innocence of a life unburdened by adult complexities. "She's so carefree," I murmured half to myself. Jessica followed my gaze and sighed. "It's hard, I know. But this situation is going to get worse before it gets better. The police will want to talk to you." What can I tell them? That I was just walking by? I felt it again, an overwhelming wave of anger rising within me. I was the ancient sea thrashing against cliffs, desperate to be understood. "I'm not a criminal. This is all just a messed up fluke." "Then let's make sure you don't get caught in it," Jessica replied, her tone serious but softening as she placed her hand on mine. "We can figure this out. I'm here, okay?" Just then my phone buzzed again with another notification. The screen lit up, displaying a message from one of my old coworkers. "Did you know your termination letter mentioned something about misconduct being investigated?" My heart plummeted. The finality of the words echoed around me, a grim reminder of my current reality. I had lost my job, but now it seemed I might lose my freedom too. I felt trapped between the urgency of my situation and the innocence of the moment beside Jessica, the laughter of children filtering through my despair. As a man, I yearned to shield myself from chaos, but the storm was already here, brewing within. "Maybe I should just disappear for a while," I suggested, more to test the waters than with real intent. Jessica's grip tightened. "You can't. We need to find a way to prove your innocence, or at least gather more information." "More information?" I scoffed, but deep down hope flickered. "I don't even know what I'm looking for. Everything feels off." Just then, dark clouds rolled overhead, and a chilling wind picked up, causing us both to shiver. As the first raindrop fell, soaking my shirt, the strangest thought struck me. Maybe I had to confront the orb and the shopkeeper again. She had known something about choices and consequences. I turned to Jessica, my voice trembling with resolve. "I think we need to go back to the shop." As I spoke, a part of me felt cracked, like I was reaching for something in the dark. The storm echoed my turmoil, and I knew I was stepping into an abyss fraught with unknown dangers. What awaited me at the shop remained cloaked in shadow, but perhaps it harbored the answers I so desperately needed. And as the rain began to pour down around us, mingling with the weight of uncertainty in the air, I took Jessica's hand, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The shop loomed above us like a fortress, each window a darkened eye watching our approach. The rain hammered down pillars of sound, drowning out the world, and I tightened my grip on Jessica's hand, a silent vow that we would face whatever waited together. As we crossed the threshold into the shop, the air shifted. The warmth from the inside met the chill clinging to our bodies, but it felt oddly oppressive, like walking into a heavy sigh. The shopkeeper stood behind the counter, her gaze unwavering and keen. "You've returned," she said, her tone layered with an enigmatic wisdom that unsettled me. "Did the orb call to you again?" I opened my mouth but found no words. Instead, I pulled out the orb, its surface glimmering in a mesmerizing dance of colors, each hue a reflection of my tumultuous emotions. "What does it mean?" I finally managed to ask, my voice steadying, demanding clarity. "The orb reveals the ripple effects of your choices," she explained, her eyes narrowing as if peering directly into my soul. "But you must first ask the right questions. Understanding requires vulnerability." I swallowed hard. I craved answers, but vulnerability felt like a betrayal to the armor I had built. My mind raced with the implications of her words. Was this orb a guide or a curse? In that moment, I couldn't help but consider the consequences of my existence, the choices made and unmade over the years. "What if I don't want to see?" I whispered, barely audible. "You will see," she replied, voice steady. "You cannot escape the truth, nor can you flee from the choices that have brought you here." As we stood in the dim light of the shop, crowded with an aura of unseen possibilities, I felt an awakening. The chaotic events spilled into my mind: the termination letter, the accident, Jessica's desperate fears, and the walls seemed to constrict around me as my heart raced at the thought that I might have had a part in this fallout after all. "Let me show you," the shopkeeper offered. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the orb, and time facilitated a shift. Colors began to swirl faster and my surroundings blurred. Anxiety bubbling in the pit of my stomach. The weight of my choices, past and present, pressed down like anchors tied to my feet. Suddenly, images began to form, vivid and disorienting. It was a life I could have had, my old job thriving, my former boss smiling. A world where I wasn't a pariah. Yet even in those joyous moments, another strand of reality pulled at my consciousness. Faces racked with fear, a future unraveling in chaos, the accident that shattered everything. "Stop," I gasped as fragmented visions flashed across my mind. "I can't." "Then speak your truth," the shopkeeper encouraged. Her voice a steady, reassuring force within the whirlwind of emotions propelling me into a spiral of despair. "What do you fear the most?" The realization hit me like cold water splashing across my skin. "I fear being powerless, and that maybe I somehow caused all this." The orb trembled beneath her fingers, glistening brightly in response to my confession. "Acknowledge it," she instructed firmly. "Claim your power and you can bend the outcome to your will. But the moment you turn away from your truth, you shall remain lost." I took a step back, overwhelmed. The storm inside me raged, forging through a new path of clarity amidst my emotional chaos. But just as I felt the stirrings of resolve, a voice drifted into the store, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Rachel, you don't have to hide." It was a man I recognized, an old colleague with eyes filled with concern that morphed into something harder: accusation. It was as if the world had intruded upon my sanctuary, a reminder that the outside chaos would only perpetuate as long as I stood here, tied to the orb and the uncommitted truths. "Please, just listen," I called out, stepping forward. "I'm trying to understand what's happening. You need to turn yourself in," he shouted back, and the words pierced through the air like an unintended betrayal. Jessica's grip on my arm tightened, her expression a blend of alarm and empathy. "You don't know the whole story," she implored, trying to pull me back into the depths of the shop. "I want to know. I want to understand what I can do." I felt the orb's warmth spreading out, and with it, a flicker of inspiration ignited within me. "You're playing with fire, Rachel," he interjected, edging closer, urgency woven into his voice. "The police are looking for you. And if I can't convince you to turn yourself in, then don't say I didn't warn you when everything collapses." A maelstrom of conflicting emotions raged within me: fear, hope, anger, and a flicker of rebellion. Would I turn myself in, surrender to the chaos brewing in the outside world? Or would I stand my ground, play the role of a protagonist in my own story? The orb pulsed again, matching the beat of my racing heart. In that moment it felt more alive than ever before, swirling with the potential of choices I hadn't yet considered. Before I could catch my breath, I turned to Jessica. "We need to leave now," I said, resolved. "But I have to figure this out on my own." With shaky breaths we stepped outside, the rain now a gentle mist that mingled with my apprehension. But as we walked away from the shop, a small voice echoed in my mind. Would I ever find the courage to confront reality before it consumed me whole? Little did I know, the storm brewing in the distance was nothing compared to the tempest that awaited on the horizon, one that would reveal not just the choices I had made, but perhaps the darker impulses of others as well. And with each step forward, I felt the weight of inevitability settle around me, leaving my heart pounding like a drum, echoing the call of the unknown. The mist hung in the air like a shroud, thickening as we stepped away from the sanctum of the shop. Every heartbeat thrummed with the questions that danced just beyond the reach of comprehension. "We should find somewhere to talk," Jessica suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. But the unease evident in her tone mirrored the turbulence within me. I knew we wouldn't find answers in the bustle of the drenched streets. "Let's go to my old cafe," I replied, the familiar place suddenly becoming a beacon of refuge in the storm. As we walked, I could feel the weight of the orb in my bag, the remnant of a choice not yet made. It pulsed with a kind of energy that felt both foreign and familiar, illuminating the path forward. Nestled in a corner of the cafe, far away from prying eyes, we settled into a small booth. I glanced around, half expecting familiar faces to materialize, feasting on memories that had turned bitter in light of recent events. but the cafe felt like a ghost of what it used to be. It was a sanctuary haunted by what I had lost. Jessica leaned in, her brow creased with worry. Rachel, do you think he's really going to tell someone? He wouldn't do that to you, right? I don't know, I admitted, my heart sinking as nightmares bloomed in my mind. He's right. If I don't confront this, it could spiral out of control. Before she could respond, the cafe door swung open, and a gust of wind swept through, carrying with it the familiar scent of coffee and pastries, and something else I couldn't quite place. My gaze was drawn to the entrance, where a figure stood silhouetted against the dim light. The brass bell chimed languidly as it swung closed, yet the weight of dread settled heavily on my chest. It was Mark, another former colleague, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. A look of dismay crossed his face, followed by a flicker of something else, concern. He crossed the cafe with a measured pace, each step amplifying my anxiety until it felt almost tangible. Rachel, he said, his voice gentle yet laced with urgency. I've been looking for you. You have to hear me out. He slid into the booth next to Jessica, and for a moment I felt cornered like an animal in the wild, caught between the hunt and escape. Why? I asked, the words spilling out like a child's defiance. Why now? Because what you think is happening, it's only the beginning. What do you know? I pressed, the agitation in my voice betraying the gravity of the situation. Mark hesitated, glancing around as if to gauge whether the ghosts of our past deeds would overhear. I'm connected to the investigation, he whispered, his tone conspiratorial, drawing me in against my better judgment. And you're not the only one they're looking at. There's something bigger here, something that reaches beyond just your incident. Jessica's hand found mine, squeezing tightly. I could feel the tremor in her fingers, a reflection of the rising fear in the pit of my stomach. What are you saying? She asked, her voice softer than I had ever known it to be. I've heard whispers, Mark continued, leaning closer, his breath carrying the tense weight of secrets. There are people involved who might frame you, not might, will. They want to bury the truth, and you're the scapegoat. His words cut through the subconscious fog I had cultivated, the gravity of my situation crashing into me like a tidal wave. Scapegoat? I echoed, my heart racing. Why would anyone want to do that? Because you were in the wrong place at the right time. They want to protect something bigger, corporate greed or competition. Something they're willing to destroy you over. No, Jessica interjected, shaking her head slowly, her face pale. That can't be true. We have to find a way to prove. There's no proof right now. Mark insisted, his voice urgent. You have to get yourself out of this while you still can. The orb seemed to hum gently in my bag, begging for attention, a reminder of the choices yet before me. The weight of my decisions loomed larger than ever, entwined with the lives intertwined in this web of chaos. What do I do? I managed to ask, a tinge of desperation coloring my tone. What you fear most, Mark said, locking his gaze onto mine, steady and unyielding. You stand your ground, confront this, find out who else is involved and expose them before they have a chance to bury you. The stakes were rising, and with them came a swell of uncertainty. Everything around me blurred together, and I felt the pulse of the orb quicken as if it sensed my swirling emotions, the rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. We have to act fast, I said, my voice suddenly fierce. I can't simply wait for this to unfold. This is about more than just me. It's about everyone involved. And God, the thought of losing everything again, but how? Jessica's eyes glistened, torn between my resolve and her fear of impending doom. You don't know what you're walking into. I have to know, I whispered, ignited by a newfound sense of purpose. I owe it to myself to unpack this truth, even if it means I'll be standing at the edge of an abyss. The realization draped over me like a cloak, a truth cloaked in shadows, a battle against unseen foes. I might be stepping out into an even greater storm, one that could expose the darkest depths of those I once called friends. Yet as I prepared to embrace my fear, the cafe door swung open again, the bell chiming in a note of foreboding. A police officer entered with a determined stride, eyes scanning the room. My heart stopped, breath hitching in my throat. Rachel Green, he called out, voice as steady as granite. We need to talk. The insurance of my choices suddenly crumbled, and I faced the decision point of my life, teetering on the brink of consequence. My heart pounded mercilessly as I met Jessica's gaze, full of shock and fear, but also of something else, an unwavering support. Would this be the moment I reveal my truth? Or would it become the final act in a much darker play, spiraling beyond my control? The answer hung in the air like the first droplet of rain before the thunderstorm, a cliffhanger waiting to plunge me into the unknown. The officer's presence felt overwhelming, the air heavy with unspoken accusations and the weight of everything I had been trying to hide. I wasn't prepared for this encounter. Jessica's hand squeezed mine even tighter, and I could feel her pulse quickening, echoing the frantic rhythm of my own heart. The moment seemed to stretch indefinitely as I stared into the officer's serious eyes, searching for any glimmer of mercy or understanding, but all I found was a stoic resolve. "Yes, that's me," I managed to say, each syllable a tremor in the face of uncertainty. "Can we step outside?" he asked, his voice steady, devoid of emotion. My mind raced. Do they suspect me? Am I in real trouble? But the fear was quickly overtaken by an instinct to protect whatever was left of my tattered life, that I glanced at Mark, 1,000 questions flooding my mind. "You need to keep your distance," Jessica whispered. "You don't know what he's going to do." He nodded slowly, eyes narrowed, and then I focused back on the officer, who was waiting patiently, as if time had no meaning to him. The cafe felt like it was collapsing around me, the laughter and chatter merging into a muffled hum. Everyone seemed blissfully ignorant of my impending storm. "All right," I conceded, my voice barely more than a whisper. I slid out of the booth, taking a deep breath as I stepped toward the exit. The bell chimed again, foreboding as I crossed the threshold into the drizzling rain. The officer led me a few steps away from the cafe, and I could feel him watching me like a hawk surveying its prey. "Rachel Green," he began without preamble, "we need to ask you some questions about your former employer and a recent incident. I assure you your cooperation could be beneficial." My breath quickened as dread filled the space between us. "What incident?" I demanded, my voice steadying with an edge of defiance. I didn't want to show weakness, not in front of him. "The explosion at the facility. The one that happened right before your termination," he replied, his gaze unwavering. Each word felt like a knife, carving through my chest, igniting walls of guilt and regret. The memory of that day flooded back, chaos, the shouts, the screams, the smoke. I had escaped, and yet here I stood, tangled in its aftermath. "That I don't know anything about that," I said, though it had a hollow ring. Fragments of the truth shifted in my mind like scattered leaves in a storm. "I was let go before it happened." He stepped closer, his voice a low murmur, almost conspiratorial. "Yet your name keeps coming up in this, Rachel. It would benefit you greatly to tell me what you know before this goes any further. You were clearly involved, whether directly or indirectly." "No," I protested, the anguish tearing through me like a tidal wave. "You don't understand. Two was set up." Flames of frustration ignited within me, desperate to be released. The orb's pulse quickened at my side, an otherworldly rhythm matching my frantic heartbeat. I wished I could simply unhook myself from this reality, disconnect from these surreal forces at play. But then I remembered Mark's words, the warning buried deep in my mind. "There's something bigger here, a web of deceit." I wasn't entirely innocent in this mess, and I had to confront it head-on, or I would be swallowed whole. The officer leaned back, considering me with narrowed eyes. "You didn't answer my question. Do you want to save yourself?" "Yes," I breathed, feeling the impending doom looming as dark clouds above. "Of course I do, but I need to know that I can trust you first." "Trust is earned," he replied, a flicker of respect crossing his face as if I had surprised him. "But it's not ideal. You have to make a choice. Help me to help yourself or hide and risk everything that I am." That moment, I felt as though I was balancing on a razor's edge, conscious of how easily I could slip and fall into the abyss below. A heavy silence enveloped us. The rain whispered around us, yet in this storm of a conversation, an unexpected flicker of kindness broke through the tumult. It grounded me. "Let's say I do cooperate," I ventured cautiously. "What then? What happens to all this chaos?" "First," he said, guiding me away from the cafe sounds, "you help illuminate the darkness around your employer, and then we can protect you. Take your findings, expose those who would put you in danger, and walk away free, or risk everything as they devour you whole." The weight of his words settled grimly upon my chest, yet beneath that, a small ember of defiance began to spark. I thought of the orb, its soft luminescence beckoning to me. "Okay," I said finally, my voice firm, "I'll do it. But I need assurance that I won't become a pawn in your game." "I can't make promises," he warned, his brows knitting together in seriousness. But I'll do what I can, Rachel. Just as I was about to respond, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I pulled it out, heart racing, only to find a message from Mark popping up. Look behind you. Heart thundering, I turned. My vision immediately locked on a figure standing just outside the coffee, a familiar frame cloaked in shadows. A sinister smirk curling upon lips that once uttered words of friendship. It was Aaron. And he was watching me as though I were the last morsel of a long overdue feast. My heart plummeted as I faced a chilling realization. I wasn't merely caught in the web. I was surrounded by snakes, all bent on preserving their own survival. I have to go, I told the officer abruptly, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Before he could respond, I turned and fled, weaving through the rain-soaked street. My heart raced, driven by fun at just for my own welfare, but because I sensed a trap closing in around me, and that moment, uncertainty clawed at me from every direction. But as I sprinted away, I could feel the pulse of hope, ignited anew, glowing with the possibility of uncovering the truth. And somehow, despite the chaos, a fragment of me was ready to face whatever darkness awaited. The rain beat down harder, wrapping me in a cloak of desperation as I dashed through the streets, my thoughts muddled by the swirling storm both outside and within. Each footfall echoed the rising cadence of dread in my chest. I'd seen Aaron lurking, and that insidious smirk was now imprinted in my mind, a reminder of betrayal that cut deeper than any wound. I ducked behind a brick wall, panting heavily. The street was desolate, the cafe fading into the distance. It provided me with a moment of fleeting, precious pause to catch my breath. I pulled out my phone again, staring at Mark's message, desperately searching for clarity in its brevity. Look behind you. So simple yet so taunting, especially in light of Aaron's looming presence. I thought of him, the friend who'd once stood by my side. His laughter, his shade of comfort, how easily it turned into an arsenal I never asked him to wield. Think, Rachel, I muttered to myself, trying to parse truth from treachery. A warm bubble of anxiety settled in my stomach, but within it, just beneath the surface, flickered that ember of defiance. I couldn't allow Aaron's games to dictate my fate. Tucking my phone away, I weighed my options, hiding or confronting the tempest. After a moment, determination surged through me. I couldn't face this alone. As I turned to retrace my steps back toward the cafe, something caught my eye, a glimmer beneath the adjacent alley's shadow. A small figure crouched low, peering cautiously. My heart jumped as I recognized the face. It was Lena, my old coworker, a clever strategist caught in this web of chaos. Rachel, she hissed, and in that single word, I sensed the weight of her urgency, the burden of knowledge. She motioned for me to come closer. I hesitated, the rain creeping in like the dank, desperate memories of our previous lives at the company, undercover investigators, the thrills of competitive pitches, the triumph of teamwork. But now it was all tinged with shadows. I advanced cautiously, still scanning the street for threats. What are you doing here? I murmured as I approached. Lena's eyes were wide with concern, and I could see she was trembling. I saw him too, Aaron. I think he's been following you. He's been spreading rumors, Rachel. They're worried about you. They think you know something. She hesitated, taking a deep breath. They want you silenced, and an icy chill coursed down my spine. I don't know anything, I insisted, though the words felt weak against the gravity of her gaze. My feelings of innocence were overshadowed by the lurking possibilities of culpability. But you do, don't you? She pressed gently. You were the last one to report the discrepancies in the accounts before the explosion. Whoever is behind this, the explosion, I murmured, dread flooding back in vivid flashes. It painted a picture of the screaming, the chaos, and inescapable revelations of my own role. It was a nightmare I had tried to escape, and yet here it was again, clawing at my heels, unrelenting. I don't want to end up like Mark, I snapped, my throat tightening at the thought of his compromise and his cowardice. Someone who could have helped but chose self-preservation over loyalty. I can't, Rachel, stop. You can't keep running, Lena interrupted, her voice soft but firm. There are others, people who care, who want to help you. I don't believe you're part of this scheme. You need to confront them, find out what they really want. My mind whirled as I considered her words. Confronting them seemed insurmountable. Even if Lena spoke the truth, it was not just Aaron I needed to contend with. There were layers and layers of deception wrapped around my old job. Layers that had festered long before the explosion and bloomed into the chaos that heralded my downfall. Yet amid all this turmoil, one fleeting thought stood out, not just to fight for my innocence, but to reclaim my life and face the uncertainties I had spent too long burying. Inspiration surged through me, stoking that flickering ember into a flame. Maybe I didn't need to confront Aaron alone. There was power in numbers, in finding alliances like Lena. Okay, I breathed out, determination hardening my features. What do you suggest? She looked relieved, the tension easing from her shoulders. Let's gather the others. I overheard some talk. People are scared, but a few of us have been piecing things together. We need to act fast. If they know we're onto them, it could change the whole game. As we huddled close, our plans forming through whispers, the rain drummed on the pavement around us, a hidden heartbeat of resilience. In that moment, the storm felt manageable because I wasn't alone. Not anymore. But in the midst of our budding resolve, a distant sound caught my attention, a car engine rumbling ominously, drawing closer. My heart dropped as I recognized the black sedan rolling around the corner. Lena, we have to go now, I urged, my instincts screaming at me to get out of sight. We turned just as Aaron and another figure, a man I recognized from the shadows of my past, exited the vehicle. My breath caught in my throat as that familiar face, cold and calculating, turned toward us, the vice president of my former company, the orchestrator of the chaos I had unwittingly entangled myself in. Too late, Rachel, he called out, a sinister grin spreading across his face. You weren't meant to be part of this game. But watch closely, it's only just begun. Panic surged within me as I realized we were no longer just pawns. They were playing with fire, and we were about to get burned. With our escape blocked and nowhere left to run, I felt the chilling thrill of impending disaster wash over me. This time I wouldn't just stand by. Hand in hand with uncertainty, a desperate fight awaited, and I was ready to face whatever darkness loomed ahead. The streets around me pulsed with a frantic energy as the rain continued its relentless assault, but a strange stillness settled in my heart, mingling dread with determination. Standing alongside Lena, covertly hidden in an alcove, I could almost hear the distant echoes of our shared laughter, the camaraderie we once had blossoming in the face of impending dread. Yet, reality dragged me back into its unforgiving grip. Rachel. Lena's voice pulled me from my reverie, laced with urgency. As we crouched low, the shadows seemed to coalesce around us, veiling our presence from Aaron and his sinister associate. We need an exit strategy. The words swirled through my mind as my heart thundered beneath my ribs. Surrounded by the darkness of looming threats and betrayal, I clung to the flickering light of hope. I was no longer the meek worker caught in the crossfire of corporate greed. I was a survivor, an ally to those who, like me, had been wronged. I leaned towards Lena, her eyes reflecting the storm outside, a mirror of the tempest within. Do you think the others are safe? I asked, the weight of uncertainty settling heavily on my chest. Her expression hardened with resolve. I can't say for certain, but we have to believe in each other. They need us as much as we need them. Directly across the street, Aaron's laughter sliced through the air, a sharp reminder of the betrayal that awaited me. I captured a glimpse of him standing next to the vice president. Their postures were relaxed, yet their eyes darted around with predatory awareness, like hunters waiting for their prey to slip up. Oh, you remember the plan from the last meeting? Lena whispered, her tone shifting to strategic urgency. The service entrance. It's a couple of blocks away, but it'll go, I interrupted, the idea solidifying like ice in my veins. It'll draw their attention, then you slip out and warn the others. They're going to exhaust all avenues to silence us. We have to get them out first. Are you insane? Lena's eyes widened in disbelief. You can't go alone. They'll know what you're up to. That I clasped her hand, the warmth of her skin grounding me even as my nerves danced wildly. I have to. I can deal with them. I can't let fear dictate my choices anymore. Even as I said the words, a sliver of doubt seeped into my resolve. What if I was wrong? What if I didn't come back? Meet me at the Green Willow Cafe in 1 hour, I continued, feeling the urgency swell within me. If I don't show up, don't wait. Get out. Protect yourself. A flicker of panic crossed Lena's face, but she nodded, a silent agreement forging an unbreakable bond between us. You better not be a hero, Rachel. Just be careful. With one last reassuring squeeze, we parted ways, tension crackling like static in the air. My heart thrummed in sync with the rain as I stepped back into the chaos of the world, a harsh contrast to the warm glow of camaraderie I had just shared. Moving swiftly, I darted through side streets, weaving between shadows, each choice punctuated by the sting of vulnerability. Every thrum of adrenaline was matched by the intense heaviness of my thoughts. If I didn't succeed, Lena and the rest of my former colleagues could pay for my failure. As I neared the cafe, I took one last look back at the chaos threatening to unfold, a scenario I had never envisioned for myself. My breath quickened at the thought that today could seal our fates, intertwining destinies within our fragile network carved from years of trust. Pushing through the cafe door, I stared down the familiar faces of my erstwhile coworkers. They were hunched over their laptops, oblivious to the brewing storm outside. I forced my voice out, cutting through the din. "We need to talk. Now!" Gasps echoed from around the room, startled expressions shifting to a mixture of recognition and fear. I fought to steady my voice, each word a battle against the noise in my head. "It's about Aaron. He's not just spreading rumors. He plans to sabotage us all. We have to work together." "What do you know?" one of them asked, skepticism etched deep into her features. I leaned forward, urgency coloring my words. "I've seen him with the vice president. They're plotting something dangerous. If we don't act now, we'll all be victims of their plan. We must get out before it's too late." One by one, the nods came, hesitant at first but quickly gaining momentum. Just as hope began to swell within me, the door swung open. Through the glass facade, rain-soaked and dangerously poised, stood Aaron, flanked by the vice president. My heart stopped as I caught the glint of something metallic tucked into Aaron's Kawada gun. "Thought we'd find you here," he called, his voice dripping with malice. "I suggest everyone stays right where they are. You wouldn't want anyone to get hurt, would you?" Panic rippled through the cafe, and the furtive looks of my colleagues turned from hope to despair, the shadow of betrayal seeping back in. As I stood between complacency and courage, my mind whirled with possibilities, each path heavy with consequence. It hit me then, the revelation that would shape everything going forward. I had to protect them. But how could I do that when my own options were evaporating before my eyes? "Come on, Rachel. Let's make this easy," the vice president taunted, stepping forward, drawing closer. "You have one chance with every heartbeat." I felt the walls closing in, laden with the weight of what was at stake. The storm outside raged on, and with trembling hands, I prepared to confront the impossible, a tempest of my own igniting within me. What would I lose next? What line would I have to cross? And just like that, the game had begun, dangerously poised, and I was all in. The air grew thicker with tension as Aaron's mocking gaze darted from one terrified face to another, relishing in the chaos he'd engineered. My heart raced, each beat a frantic plea for clarity amidst the confusion enveloping the cafe. The murmurs of my former colleagues converged into a singular chorus of dread, amplifying my resolve even as fear clawed at me from every side. I couldn't let them break. "You don't need to listen to him," I shouted, shaking off the grip of panic that threatened to choke me. "We can't let him manipulate us like puppets." Aaron's laughter rang out, steeped in contempt. "Oh, look at you trying to be a hero. It's quite pathetic, really. You have no power here, Rachel. You can't save anyone." The desperation in my colleagues' eyes gnawed at me, their faith faltering like a candle flickering against a gale. I took a step forward, a surge of courage igniting something deep within me. "You're wrong, Aaron. Together we're stronger. Don't you see? You can't divide us so easily." The room held its breath, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I caught a glimmer of hope in the eyes of a young intern named Maya. She straightened, her lips pressed into a line of determination, and began to rise from her chair, but Aaron was faster. He stepped closer to me, brandishing the weapon in the space between us as if it were a mere toy rather than a tool of intimidation. "Let's keep this civil, shall we?" The vice president's voice slurred through a wry smile, but I could see the tightness in his jaw. He was trying to maintain control, knowing that the very foundation of their plans was at risk. "Join us and we can cut a deal." "You're smart, Rachel. Why waste your talent on these failures?" I swallowed hard, mind racing. They were trying to play my emotions against me, to appeal to the part of me that longed to be accepted, but I would not betray the people who had stood by me all these years. I took another step forward, heart pounding louder than the rain hammering against the cafe windows. "If you think you'll choose betrayal, you don't know me at all." In that moment something shifted. The tension crackled anew like a charged wire, sparking a collective gust of determination among my colleagues. They were rising together, hesitant but brave, finding strength in shared purpose. A slow murmur surged through the group, their fear melting into a ripple of resolve. If I was going to protect them, I had to be their voice. "Aaron, what you're doing is illegal," I said, forcing composure into my voice. "Threatening us won't silence us. We're prepared to fight back, to expose you." The anger that flickered in his eyes was a storm brewing. "You really think this is going to end well for you?" He raised the gun and time stalled. A young man from the back of the cafe shouted, "We're not afraid of you. We stand united." The boldness of his declaration filled the room like an electric charge. It was the tipping point. "Go!" I yelled, instinctively pushing Maya and the others toward the side exit. The sound of shuffling chairs hurried their movement, but Aaron's focus snapped back towards me, fury igniting a wild blaze in his demeanor. "Stay where you are," he thundered, his finger twitching dangerously near the trigger, and that instant, I felt an overwhelming surge of bravery. I stepped in front of the others. "If you want to shoot someone, then shoot me." My voice rang out, echoing louder than my own fear. "You know I'm the one standing in your way." The room held its breath as a tense silence enveloped us. I could see the desperation mingling with confusion in Aaron's eyes, the weight of his actions suddenly reflecting back on him. The gun trembled in his hand, losing its power as the truth of what had become settled between us. The vice president's sneer broke through the calm, clawing at Aaron's restraint. "Don't listen to her. Do it. Show them your control." But Aaron hesitated. That glimmer of vulnerability faltered for just a moment, and in that sliver of time, I could see the conflict raging within him. "Rachel, don't." Lena's voice broke through my fog of determination, the sound slamming against the cafe's walls with a reminder of the bond we shared. That a crash erupted outside me. Heart lurched as the glass door flung wide open amidst the thunder of footsteps. Figures poured into the cafe, the noise overwhelming, and I couldn't discern friend from foe in the swelling chaos. "Get back!" shouted a dark hooded figure, brandishing a weapon similar to Aaron's. My heart raced as dread surged within. Muho had come to our aid. And at what cost? In that moment everything collided, the voices, the intentions, the long-buried emotions. Fear mingled with hope as I stood paralyzed at the convergence of two storms. I had fought so hard not to fall, but as the world around me spiraled, I could feel the ground giving way beneath my feet. And just when I thought I had reached a climax, the mysterious figure pointed directly at me, eyes dark and fierce. "Rachel, we need you. Now." Every instinct in me screamed to trust no one, yet I sensed an urgency that called me forward. As chaos threatened to swallow me whole, I dared to step closer, motivated by a glimmer of possibility. What awaited me in that frantic moment could reshape our fate, or seal our doom. Caught on the edge of desperation, I had no choice but to leap into the unknown, and the echoes of treachery hung heavily in the air. Would I find the salvation we desperately needed? Or would I unravel everything with one reckless decision? My heart pounded. Time was running out, and the next few seconds would dictate our lives. With hope coursing through my veins, I took a deep breath and prepared to make my move. The cacophony around me surged as people scrambled for safety, the air thick with fear and confusion. The dark hooded figure stood resolute, muscles tensed as they trained their weapon on me, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on my shoulders. Every breath I took tasted of mixed desperation and the flicker of hope igniting a force within me. "Rachel," the figure barked again, urgency crackling through their voice. "We don't have time." I wanted to scream, to run, but in the fray of panic, amidst the shouts for help and warnings against the mingling darkness, something anchored me to that spot. "What do you mean? Who are you?" My voice felt fragile, barely managing to carry over the chaos. "Your allies, they're in danger." The words cut through me like a blade. Aaron, watching with wary anger, seemed to deepen his grip on the weapon as if unsure to aim at me or the newcomer. Adrenaline surged through my veins, wrapping around my heart like a coiled spring. I knew I couldn't back away now. Too much was at stake, and more than just my life hung in the balance. I turned my gaze toward my colleagues, their faces slick with sweat and panic, too many emotions swirling like a tempest. I thought of the years we'd spent together, the camaraderie and mutual now thrown into disarray by a man fueled by cruelty. "What do you want?" I yelled at the hooded figure, demanding clarity amidst confusion. "Help us bring him down," they said, eyes fierce and unwavering, yet shadowed by an unspoken history that I could not comprehend. "You need to create a diversion while we disable the exits." I exchanged a glance with Maya, who was gripping the arm of the man who had earlier shouted in defiance. Fear painted across her face, but within her eyes, there was a flicker of resolve, a reflection of my own. Perhaps Aaron was right, we had no power alone, but together? Together we could forge something indomitable. "I can't do this without them," I said, my voice gentler this time, reaching out to the onlookers who still held their ground, gathered as one. "We can't allow Aaron to dictate our fate. Stand with me. For our future." Maya nodded, her spirit reigniting the shared courage, and I felt the pulse of solidarity surge through us. "Rachel, be careful," Lena shouted, her voice breaking like glass, but determination filled the air around her still. She was here, unyielding. "Listen," I cried, stepping closer to the figure, my eyes never wavering from their grip. "Well, do it. But you have to promise that when this is over you won't turn on us. We deserve to know we can trust you." The hooded person paused, the rush of voices behind me a mere backdrop to the pleading weight of my request. "You have my word." With that, a collective inhale swept through our little enclave, the solidarity forming a fragile boundary against the storm outside. I could sense Aaron's disbelief, the subtle twitch in his efforts to control the moment losing its grasp. "Listen. They'll only divide us again. You know this," I shouted, desperate to hold everyone together as the ground felt unsteady. "United we're unstoppable." Maya stepped forward, her voice cracking but unwavering. "Rachel is right. We can't let fear win. No more violence, no more manipulation. We have to fight for what's ours." The energy hummed, a palpable charge igniting hope like fireflies blinking nervously into the night. The dark hooded figure stepped to my side, weapon still poised, but its intent shifted, redirecting focus to Aaron. "You'll back down now, both of you," they said, challenge growing fierce in the air. "Not backing down." Aaron's deranged smile twisted. The mix of desperation and fury churned violently in his gaze. "You think this is over?" Suddenly another crash sounded, this one from the rear entrance. My heart plummeted. More intruders? In that moment a flood of employees and supporters surged in. Faces I recognized, but also many I didn't. Some wore badges from our old company, past allies, now brought back to fight. That sudden influx bolstered our strength, yet fear whispered ominously through Muhat, if this escalated? What if this new force turned the tide against us? "Now!" the hooded figure shouted, breaking indecision like glass as the room filled with bodies and shouts. I found myself plunging into solidarity with colleagues that I had laughed and celebrated with for so long. We were together on this thin tightrope, unsure of the drops that loomed around us. My heart pounded, caught between the pull to fight back against Aaron and the new identities of allies I'd never expected. Fear mingled with a courage that was almost agonizing. The sound of chaos blended into a haunting melody, and I knew that this fight would determine everything. Just as hope began simmering at the forefront of my emotions, Aaron charged forward, wild determination flaring in his eyes. A wordless scream lodged in my throat as I tightened my fists, the approach of danger ever nearer. Before I could fully comprehend, a blinding flash lit the room. A cacophony erupted. I barely registered the piercing sound of gunfire slicing the air before a brilliant explosion engulfed everything in a terrible embrace of chaos. And in that moment of despair, time froze, foreboding shadows now dancing upon every thread of hope I had tried to weave together. It was then that I realized the path I had chosen, not fully trusting the past, yet yearning to embrace our uncertain future. But as the dust began to settle, a new scent filled the air, a strange, acrid burn. Darkness engulfed everything around me as strength threatened to abandon me. In the haze of confusion I stumbled forward. And in that moment I turned to my team, everyone I had fought so hard to protect, and froze, heart pounding at what I saw, or rather, didn't. The space around me had transformed into a nightmare, and their faces revealed only shards of fear and uncertainty as silence spread its wicked embrace. I was losing them, a familiar dread whispering in the corners of my mind. Had our miscommunications and chaotic attempts to stand together cost too much? And then I saw a figure, the one who had come to our aid, now fading into shadowed chaos. "Rachel, we have to go now." But I couldn't move. I stood frozen in anguish at the precipice of a darkness I never intended to wade through, and all I could think was, had we miscalculated our allies in this fight for survival? Trapped between choices, sorrow, and fate dangling precariously in front of me, I gripped my heart and prayed for a glimmer of hope amidst the suffocating fear, awaiting the answer to the only question left echoing in my mind. Who could I trust? The acrid smoke enveloped me, a thick haze mingling with raw desperation. My heart pounded in my chest, the chaos swirling around me more vibrant than the despair clinging to my soul. I stumbled forward, trying to grasp what was left of hope, trying to rescue my friends from the explosive aftermath of mistrust and betrayal. But the faces surrounding me blurred, echoes of fear painting the edges of their expressions in fractured shards that echoed my own fear. Rachel. The hooded figure beckoned again, urgency drumming through the command. The chaos cascaded around us, but clarity crystallized in my heart. I couldn't stand frozen. This was my moment to fight back, to anchor my resolve and shine a light through the darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. Get out! Leave! I shrieked, forcing myself to focus on my colleagues. I could see them moving towards the back exit. I had to protect them. This was my chance to guide them through the storm. The hooded figure hovered close, providing a fierce protective energy against the chaos. The heat was suffocating, trickles of fear pooling into a deep well of courage. Let's clear a path, I yelled, throwing myself into the fray. It didn't matter that Aaron still loomed, fuming amidst the cacophony. We can't let them take us down. The room surged with life as the spirit of rebellion ignited in those who once thought they were powerless, those who had been worn down by fear and doubt. Together we formed a rushing wave of resistance. Some peered past the haze to draw allies from every corner of the cafe, while others remained fixed on me, willing to follow. Stick together. That motto echoed within me like a sacred charge, pushing me forward through the tumult. The walls thudded with the thumps of feet, determination spilling forth in bursts of frenzied energy. I caught glimpses of unwavering faces, the interns, the baristas, and even those former colleagues who had shrunk from conflict moments before. We were banded together now, tearing through ignorance and hopelessness. In this tidal surge I felt the release of a tempest unleashed. My emotions roared like wildfires, carving pathways of resilience and strength in their wake. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, a dance of chaos fueled by hope. Suddenly, the weight that had pinned me in inertia began to lift. Each shout reinforced my resolve, each fierce look echoed the commitment we shared. But lingering shadows darted along the edges. Through the smoke I glimpsed Aaron's smirk. It pushed through all barriers, melting into a sneer that sparked contempt as he sought to reclaim control. He raised the weapon again, though now uncertainty flickered in his demeanor, but the burning flame inside me spread outward, drawing tendrils of defiance. You won't break us, I declared. And in that moment, the true turning point flickered like neon against the dim chaos. As Aaron stepped forward, a silhouette dancing in recycled flames, a collective shout tore through the tumult, piercing the mist thickening around us. We've come too far to back down, yelled Mark, surfacing through the smoky, a wild card igniting solidarity's charm. Others echoed back, everyone intertwined in a web of mutual refusal to let our story end here. My heart echoed their rallying call, reinvigorated by shared purpose and solidarity. Aaron's twisted grin began to falter. You think you can stand against me? He spat, the bravado cracking around its edges. But together we took a step forward. Yes, I shouted, the sound an anthem roaring through the clouds of uncertainty. We gather strength from each other. And today we take back our lives. And without further hesitation we lunged forward, a torrent of momentum shattering the illusion of his control. I felt alive amidst the chaos and shadows, reminding myself that I had carved my path. With a determined heart, I reached for the hooded figure next to me, nodding slightly, our silent pact binding us in cooperation. The storm within could no longer cage me. I was free. And just then a gunshot rang out. Each breath tensed in an instant. Frozen into me, a moment embossed on the fabric of destiny. I turned to face Aaron, the fire still flickering in his eyes, but as my colleagues surged around, I saw a shift. The gun had transformed into a symbol, revealing that perhaps it wasn't just about fear anymore. As darkness clashed against light, I stepped forward, my arm raised. This doesn't have to end in violence, I implored desperately. my voice steady amidst the swelling chaos. Together, we're stronger than your manipulation. Look around you. We've created something powerful. His expression faltered, shattered by the very unity he sought to suppress. No, you can't take this away from me, Aaron cried, clenching the weapon as rebellion began to unfurl among us. And the true battle was no longer with fists but with resolve. You don't understand anything. I understand, I said, heart pounding in defiance. You're scared. But so are all of us. Yet fear can either drown us or remind us to rise, hand in hand. He hesitated, just for a second, a sliding door between hatred and clarity. In that hesitation my heart surged with purpose, fueled by the realization that perhaps, in this whirlpool of emotions and chaos, we could help him too. With the moment stretching, I stood my ground, an anchor in a tsunami of uncertainty. I extended my hand toward him, shaking yet firm. Join us, I pleaded, voice crackling with sincerity. Stop this charade. We can rise together. In that heartbeat, clarity wrapped around us like fragile glass. A moment encompassing all my love and anger, laying bare the truth of seeking redemption. And then, against the backdrop of rushing voices and feet marching forward, I whispered the words that shifted everything. Forgiveness can be powerful, Aaron. It's the shield we carry in our hearts. The moment revolved around us like a tangible spirit, coaxing potential into action. The darkness quivered, shadows retreating as he placed the gun down, surrendering more than just the weapon, surrendering fear itself. No one ever really tried to understand me, he murmured, eyes glistening with vulnerability laid bare. The sharp edges of hardened ambition crumbling. In that instant, unity flickered bright within me, as my colleagues surged forward, not just as allies, but as an interconnected tapestry from which our futures could weave. As footsteps accelerated around us, I reached out once more. Let's write a new ending together this time, one that allows growth instead of destruction. The people rallied behind me, emboldened by the possibility of forging a new path, and as if summoned by pure purpose echoed through the chaos, a collective grasp united us. Freely, I pushed toward his outstretched hand, a reconciliatory bridge crafted in the fervent decision to rise together. In unison, we breached the divide forged by treachery, the past blended into the present, and I knew we could create something more than just an end. We could nurture hope, allowing it to bloom amidst the chaos. At that moment, the doors of possibility swung wide as we plunged into the future side by side. The shadows transformed into a cascade of light. Standing at the precipice, I spoke my final promise, strength radiating from the core of my being. Together, we'll bear our pasts and carve a new beginning. Together we'll be the change. And as the world faded beneath my feet, a vast luminous horizon stretched before me, draped in the colors of rebirth, a promise that echoed into the night and breathed deeply. Forgiveness, unity, love, our greatest strength.